are you? It's lovely
I'm
to
okay.
chat.
I'm okay. How are you?
Good, yeah, really well, thank you.
Good.
So we're here tonight, aren't we, to talk about puppies and coronavirus and the pandemic and the fact that lots of people are really struggling, aren't they, with their dogs, with the new puppies that they've got right now, knowing how to cope with them in these weird times that we're living in. So thank you ever so much for joining me. This should be fun.
Pleasure.
So I think that let's introduce ourselves first. So my name's Kat. If you don't know me, I am a small animal vet in practice, and I am currently seeing quite a lot of puppies at the moment because we're still vaccinating them because it's so important. So Rosie, tell us a bit about you.
So I'm a pet behaviourist. I'm based in Bristol, and I see dogs, cats and rabbits, but I mainly do dogs. And I also see puppies for kind of behaviour problem prevention sessions as well. So I do those remotely and normally at houses as well. Obviously we're restricted in that at the moment. So I've kind of got a good idea of the normal types of puppy problems that people experience, how they can develop into more serious behaviour problems later on in life, and the difficulties that the restrictions at the moment are causing puppy owners now, and the potential problems that we might see out the back of this if puppy owners aren't given the correct advice at the moment. So yeah, any way of getting the information across to them I think is brilliant.
Great, because yeah, I totally get that, because I think prevention is very much better than cure, isn't it, for dogs and their behaviour?
Yeah, so much easier. Yeah,
exactly. So let's start right from the beginning. So what are the things that people can do when they first bring their new baby puppy home, into the house? What should they be bringing from the breeder to help the settling in process? What should they have planned beforehand? What's your advice around that kind of thing?
So I'm not actually sure what the restrictions would be at the moment with regards to bringing an item home from the breeder's home.
Normally,
normally we'd recommend, a couple of toys, blanket, that kind of thing. Most breeders would have ready for them, but I think there's probably limitations on that. So the first thing really is trying to pick up a puppy, if possible, during the morning, so that the puppy's got time to acclimatise to their new environment throughout the day, rather than just being brought back and then expected to go to sleep and settle down. Obviously that's not always possible, so that's one thing. The next thing would then be for owners to realise that this is like a momentous day for the puppy as well as for the owners. So the puppy's going to be emotionally and mentally taking in so much information in this day, and it's really important that, despite the fact that we're really excited, and we might have children that are really, really excited about this new puppy, that we still
around in a minute.
Well, exactly, yeah. And both of us have got young kids, so we know exactly what it's like. And it's really important that the puppies are given the opportunity to still rest and get loads of sleep. And that's really how they're absorbing all this information about their new environment. So making sure that they've got somewhere quiet, that the kids leave the puppy alone when the puppy is having a rest time, that's super important. And doing that from day one as well. So making sure that the puppy from the start has lots of opportunity for rest and settling down quietly. And then, go on.
Well, I was going to say, would you advise crate training? Because it's something that I tell all my puppy owners to do. I think it's a really great idea to give the puppy the crate, that safe space that they need to rest. Because puppies sleep, isn't it like 18 hours a day or something? Yeah. It's a huge amount of sleep that they do. And then obviously you can shut them in the crate, and then you know that they're safe when you leave them. They're not going to start chewing on the wires or the furniture or anything like that. So is that kind of the kind of thing that you would agree with?
Yeah, I mean, there's loads of benefits to crate training for sure. Like, traveling in a crate, if you're going away somewhere and you can take the crate with you, having to come into the vets and needing to be confined in a kennel or a crate environment. So loads of advantages. Yes, I do crate train, and I do recommend crate training, but crate training is the important part of that sentence. So we don't ever just put a puppy in a crate and shut the door and let them get on with it and deal with the distress that might cause. We always make sure that the puppy loves its crate. It chooses to spend time in there when the door's open. that really we only end up shutting the door when we really need to. So normal, most of the time the puppy's got the choice to come and go from the crate, because if you think about it, it's only going to be a safe space if the puppy knows it can come out when it needs to and can take itself in when it wants to. So then we build up shutting the door on it so that it learns that confinement is also fine, and they just settle down when they're confined. So there's loads of positives to crate training. One of the problems I see is that often the crates people get are too small. So I think it's really important that puppies have an area that they can sleep in, but then there's also an area, like if they need to stretch out and they get a bit hot, you know, it's not just the size of a puppy when it's asleep. That's not an ideal size of crate.
So they do take up quite a bit of room for a while then, don't they?
They can, yeah, especially when
the kitchen or the house.
Yeah,
so
they can be cumbersome.
How do we make our puppies love their crates?
So the first thing I would do is I wouldn't think about closing the door initially, so don't focus on that bit, just make it super comfy. And that's another problem I see, is sometimes people just put a bit of vet bed in the bottom and think that that's suitable. I always say to people, you want it to be as comfy, look as comfy like you'd want to get in there and curl up and go to sleep. So you're looking at kind of cushions or blankets that are kind of up the side of the crate, so that they can lean up against the side nice and comfortably, that there's water in there all the time. And to start with, you would just feed their meals in there, and it might not even be in a bowl in the crate. You might scatter some of their food amongst the bedding so that they've got to really kind of root around and walk around the crate and familiarise themselves with the feel of the crate under their feet. You might then start giving them a licky mat or a Kong or something that takes a bit longer, and they might settle down, lie down in the crate and work at that. And that's when you would start to just swing the door shut and get them used to that confinement.
Cool. Okay. So what and where, so I have another question. I've really been looking forward to this because I've really been looking forward to picking your brain about all things puppies. We will come on to the pandemic in a minute, but I just want to really pick your brains about this. So where should the crate be? Should it be downstairs in the kitchen, or should it be upstairs in the bedroom to start off with? You know, that first night, like you say, when the puppy comes home and it's dealt with such a lot on that big day when it's moved to its forever home. Where should this crate be?
Well, personally, when I've got a 1-year-old puppy, so I was doing all this a year ago, and I had a crate downstairs and a crate up next to my bed for the first few days. So when it comes to bedtime on that first night, it's kind of up to owners what their preference is. But my personal advice is that somebody should stay with the puppy to give it some sort of company for that first night or couple of nights, depending on the individual puppy. So my preference is to carry my puppy upstairs and pop it in a crate that's identically set up to the one downstairs next to the bed, so that I hear when she needed to get up to go to the toilet. So there was no toileting accidents from day one. And it is just that initial few minutes when you're just trying to settle them down to sleep. It's much, much quicker if somebody's lying there with the puppy. And I know lots of owners would choose to sleep downstairs for a few nights next to the puppy's crate in the lounge, for example, or put up a bed. That's totally an individual preference.
And is that okay as well?
That's absolutely fine. I mean, my dogs don't sleep upstairs with me. Lots of people worry that if they start off with the puppy upstairs, it's going to create an issue. It takes me about a week for the puppy to wean out of the bedroom onto the landing, and then they're downstairs.
So they gradually move away from you.
I literally moved the crate like a couple of feet at a time out of the bedroom each night. And it is just while they acclimatise that this is their home, you're their new attachment figures. Once they've got all that sorted, they're generally happy to then be away from you. But I think it's too much to expect a puppy to take in their new surroundings, new people, potentially new animals, totally different scent profile. You know, there's so much for them to take in, and then to expect them to cope without the warmth or company of any figure overnight is, and then what you often get is the advice that if the puppy cries overnight, just ignore them. Even if you put earplugs in, you must ignore them, stay really firm and never go down to them. And we know now that that can be a precursor for separation issues later in life. So
yeah,
better
I did used to give that advice, you know,
well,
leave them to cry, they'll soon get used to it.
Yeah.
But it was wrong, wasn't it? And actually now, because they're babies. I think that's what we know, they're babies, but we often underestimate how young they are and what a humongous change, because we've looked forward to them coming, haven't we? We've known that they're coming and we've been planning for it for a while, but obviously for the puppy themselves it's a massive change. And I've come around to this feeling that actually it's okay to give them some reassurance and some comfort and some company, because you know, and if you want them to sleep in the bedroom for the rest of their lives, then that's fine.
That's fine as well.
You're going to do it, that's okay, isn't it?
Yeah.
But if you don't fancy sharing your bed with 35 kilos of Labrador or 50 kilos of Mastiff or whatever it is, you know, then they gradually can come down to their own space, can't they? And it is like having a baby, a new baby. You're going to be getting up in the night, aren't you? And you know, there's going to be some disturbed nights. So in a way, how everybody being at home, I guess now, it isn't the worst idea, is it? And it might be a good idea anyway to kind of plan to be at home maybe for a while. What would you suggest? Could you pick a puppy up on a Friday and then go back to work on a Monday, or is it better to try to have that first week at home with them anyway?
Yeah, I would generally say that it's probably going to be easier for everyone if there's a bit of time, a week or two off to spend with the puppy. But not in a normal scenario, it would be really important to, in that week or two, to start building up separation in that time. And obviously that's where we're a bit more restricted now. So yeah, puppy advice at the moment is to try and make sure we're proactively building in separation at the moment, so that that puppy isn't going to get used to someone available 24/7. And that's one thing that I am a little bit concerned about further down the line, when people return to work and puppies you know, just aren't used to it. So so some of the things I'd be recommending are that we make sure that the puppies at the moment can cope with even being in another room away from people, and that they can cope with that when people are very quiet as well, so the puppy's not actually sure that they're in the house. That we start to build up being in the garden maybe with the puppy in the house, just for short periods. You know, I'm not saying spend an afternoon in the garden without your puppy, but just for short periods. And it very much depends on how big the family unit is at home as well. If it's a sole owner, that person can also build separation by doing their shopping maybe, or popping to see, you know, if they're carers, or any of the reasons they might leave the house. But that's going to be different if it's a family and the whole family's rarely leaving the house.
Everybody's in, aren't they? Nobody's going to school.
No.
A lot of people aren't going to work. So yes, it is. That's something else I think that is often underestimated. And I agree. I think we're going to see problems soon, is that our dogs have to learn to cope on their own. They're social creatures. It's okay to give them company, and that's normal and natural. But at some point or other, they will have to be left. They will have to be left because you're going to go to work or the shops or to school or, you know, whatever. And they're going to have to learn to cope on their own. And, you know, every so often, obviously, you know, we'll see separation anxiety. And I don't know about you, but it is amazing the lengths people go to never leave the dog alone, because the dog has developed such an issue with being left, and it cries and disturbs the neighbors or starts to destroy things in the house. And so that's what I'm advising my puppy owners to do at the moment, is to just make sure. Would you say just once a day, or does it need to be a couple of times a day? Well, what are we aiming for? Are we aiming for the puppy to sit in its crate with the door closed and everybody just, you know, we're all having puppy quiet time, we're going to tiptoe around in another room? What would be the ideal scenario for teaching your puppy at the moment to be on its own?
How to do it? Yeah, well, it's going to really vary. So some puppies really struggle with separation from day one. It's just they just do. They have kind of distress from the moment they're brought home, and if they're left on their own. So it's going to really vary. So for any puppy, the rule would generally be you don't want them to get distressed. So if you're sitting in your garden hearing your puppy for 10 minutes howl and bark and scrabble in the house, that's not doing any good at all.
Yeah.
So you want to try and keep the puppy what we call under threshold. So it means that it's it's aware that it's on its own, but it's able to cope. It might show a little bit of whimpering, but it can settle itself. So it's not getting to the point of getting distressed. So if the puppy's getting distressed, it's just finding it a negative experience, and it's finding being left on its own scary or unpleasant. So I always recommend people, they're really cheap to get now off Amazon or any, I don't want to promote anywhere, these kind of puppy cams or doggy cams that you can get that link to your phone. They're really, really useful, because sometimes people aren't even aware that their puppy or their dog is struggling. So then you can sit in the garden or just round the corner or somewhere else in the house and actually watch what the puppy's doing. And that can be reassuring for owners that their puppy is settled, but it also can tell other owners that their puppy's not settled and it needs a little bit more help. So really, we go at the pace of the puppy. If the puppy can stay relaxed and sleepy or licking at a Kong for half an hour, then leave it for half an hour. That's brilliant. And you might do the same again later that day. You can do it a couple of times a day. If the puppy can't even cope with you going to the toilet and shutting the door on it, then you need to start right back at a baby gate and it learning that having a barrier between you and the puppy is okay. So it's very, very independent, individual.
And what are we aiming for? Are we aiming, is it okay to leave them for like 2 minutes and then have to go back to them because they're getting stressed? Or do we need to, you know, really try to stretch it out to 5 minutes? Or, you know, how do we build it up? Because if we go back every 2 minutes, we're never going to be able to leave them for any longer than 2 minutes.
So I think that if you want to return to the puppy either before it starts showing any distress or at the very first signs of it starting to just bubble a little bit, if it's clear it's not going to self-settle. So it is quite a fine line. It's a fine line between them building a little bit of resilience and able to learn to self-settle, and you're not pandering to every little whimper and noise they make, but not letting them get to the point of distress. I think for people who have got really sensitive puppies where they can't even do 2 minutes, they're probably better off having a one-to-one remote consult with loads of puppy trainers are providing it at the moment, and seeking some specific advice on that, because that is quite a sensitive puppy.
That prevention is better than cure, and I'm sure we can all pick a few breeds out that are more sensitive. More sensitive. So obviously we need to start training, and I guess, you know, in real life you're going to almost do that kind of by accident, aren't you? You're going to pop out for 10 minutes and pop it, you know, and get back and stuff. So we need to do that at the minute with the pandemic, is deliberately leave them. But what about exercising them and getting, you know, how can we get these puppies out and about? I would say, you know, obviously from my perspective as a vet, where I come in most puppies' lives is when they come for their vaccinations. When we were initially in lockdown, we were trying to avoid that entirely, but once the lockdown continued, we realised that we were going to have to get these puppies vaccinated, because it is so important to get them out and about, because the socialising and learning to cope in the house is one thing, but they've also got to cope with the great big wide world, haven't they? And we've got to get them. We've got to get them out. So, you know, I would say to people, when it comes to vaccinations and things, call your local practice as soon as you know you're getting a puppy, and as soon as possible, because what some practices are doing at the moment is they are on real skeleton staff. So it's not that they don't want to vaccinate your puppy, it's that they physically cannot vaccinate your puppy. They have not got the space in their schedules right now, so we can get that booked in as soon as possible. Now, one thing I always tell people is, before the vaccines are finished, so we do 2 vaccinations 2 or 4 weeks apart normally for most dogs, but I discuss with people, it's so important to get them out and about and see the world, that it's okay to carry them for a while. Is that advice correct?
Well, I think so. Obviously people with huge breed puppies might struggle past 10-12 weeks to carry them, but for the majority, absolutely. And I think that's, again, really important thing to do, rather than to give the advice to just stay at home for that really crucial developmental period. The only thing I would say is that some puppies might struggle with being carried. They shouldn't, but some might be scrabbly and not enjoying it. And again, it's really important that whilst we're exposing them to things in life that they might find a little bit strange or overwhelming, that they're also feeling quite secure and happy being carried. So similar, you can get these kind of doggy backpacks and slings that you put them in, or even like,
I know, one of my owners said to me this week that they'd bought one and they'd been carrying it around on the front like a little baby.
And again, the majority take to it really well because they're so used to being handled and carried at the breeders. But what you wouldn't want is to put the puppy in that, or in a puppy pram, and them to be really not enjoying the experience and trying to get out, because that emotional state will then be associated with all the other things that they're experiencing out on the walk as well. So the puppy's calm and feel safe. And then there's a difference between exposing puppies to the big wide world, which should be quite easy for us to do at the moment, versus socialization, which we are more restricted in terms of physical socializing with other dogs in the park. So yeah, exposing them should be quite easy as long as they are being taken out and about, seeing traffic, cyclists, joggers, people, dogs, etc. And there are some advantages to exposure rather than socialization as well, because I think puppy owners often feel like we must socialize our puppy and introduce them to every dog that we meet, and that can create some problems later on, where puppies have an expectation that other dogs on walks are there to be played with. And then you become the nuisance dog owner in the park whose dog runs across the park to terrorize every dog they see, you know, elderly, just had an operation, not very sociable dogs getting annoyed. So I like to create an expectation in my dogs that dogs are there to be seen, but staying with me is preferable, and then they have their kind of set doggy friends that they do their kind of socialization with.
Which is the same as us, isn't it? You know, you have people in the park, you're like, morning, but you see your friend and you sit down for a coffee because that's what you want to do.
And we don't go and rugby tackle someone we don't know on the other side of the field, do we? So
this is it. I think there's so many parallels, isn't there, between, you know, bringing up children and bringing up puppies, but also we're so similar to dogs in how we view the world and how we want them to interact with the world as well. And that's what I've told a lot of people recently, is that, you know, actually for some, you know, the really super cute puppies as well, you know, these little tiny bundles of fluff that everybody wants to say hello to and like looms over at and is desperate to talk to them, that can be quite overwhelming, can't it, for a puppy? And you know, to have everybody stay back and so it can sort of exactly observe everything. I tell people that, you know, again, I'm using your knowledge to make sure that I'm doing the right thing these days. But I tell people that you don't want a dog that wants to play with other dogs, and you don't want a dog that's frightened of other dogs. You just want a dog that's not bothered about other dogs.
It's quite indifferent. Because
you're, you know, you're its family, and you're the one it wants to spend the time with and stuff. So So at the moment, obviously, we're all only allowed out for an hour a day per adult. So if you've got a puppy, I guess, again, from the vet's perspective, some vets it's very individual to the practice that you're with. So what you need to do when you've got this puppy is just call them and say, right, I've got a new puppy. What are you doing about vaccines? How are you working it? Some people are just sticking with their normal protocols, which tends to be one vaccine at 8 weeks and then another one at either 10 or 12. Some are shifting that first 8-week vaccine back to 10 weeks old. So they're vaccinating them slightly later in life. After 10 weeks, a single vaccination will protect your puppy against distemper, parvovirus and hepatitis. But the only one that needs to go in twice at that point is leptospirosis. And so leptospirosis can be 2 to 4 weeks later. So what a lot of practices are doing is trying to push their puppy vaccines back to 10 weeks. And then getting the puppies out and about, and then doing the lepto, hopefully once we're out of lockdown and things will be a little bit easier. But also, of all the diseases, lepto is probably the easiest to avoid. So leptospirosis is a bacterial infection, the others are all viral, and it's passed by rats mainly, and in rats' urine. Sometimes it can be associated with horses and sheep as well. So if you've got a puppy, so my advice to people at the moment is if you've got a puppy and we want to get them out and about, but vaccines are being a bit late or protocols are changing, get them out and about. The best place that all the diseases we protect against are passed in bodily fluids. So poo, wee, snot, all that sort of thing. So a lot of the time what I'm telling people to do is avoid places where dogs will wee or poo or sniff. So lampposts, that's it.
Yeah.
Most people do scoop their poop in public places. You'll find a lot of quieter country roads and lanes. They might not if they don't think anybody's watching, but you can see, you can see the poo, can't you?
Yeah.
So at least you can, even if it's completely impossible to vaccinate them, and they get distressed by being carried or they're too big to be carried, I think what I would say to people is the socializing is so important, and the exposure to the big wide world is so important, that although I wouldn't normally advise taking an unvaccinated puppy out and about, right now, if they can't have their vaccines, I probably would. And I would stick to places where you can see that so you can see a wee up a lamppost, you can see a poo on a floor if someone has been unpleasant enough to leave it behind. You can avoid the places where that sort of thing might be. And just walking around the roads, tarmac is very exposed as well. All the viruses and bacteria are all killed by sunlight, rain, exposure. So anywhere exposed is generally very safe as well, or as safe as we can make it. But I guess that's okay for socializing, isn't it? Because they're going to see traffic and joggers and cyclists on the road.
I think it's definitely one of those things, isn't it, where you've just got to weigh up the risks.
Yeah.
The pros and cons for behavioural problems. I think the statistic still stands where more dogs are euthanized because of behavioural problems than from vaccinatable disease.
But by a long way.
But the argument of that is that most dogs are vaccinated, so therefore you're going to see fewer vaccinatable disease
but
problems.
even in vaccinated dogs, the biggest killer of young dogs is euthanasia for behavioural problems. That's what diseases don't kill them, we do, unfortunately, and because we've let them down and they have become unmanageable for the vast majority of pet owners. So when it comes to exercising puppies,
so one question I had for you was, with if let's say it's a one adult household or even two adult households, and that person has to combine, that's their daily exercise, isn't it? Their puppy walk is their only daily exercise. So people might be tempted to take their puppy out for quite a long trek, because it might be the only exposure the puppy gets that day to the outside world, and B, the person themselves want the exercise. And I just wondered what your thoughts were with regards physical exercise in puppies. Obviously I've got my thoughts on the behavioural side of that, but what's your thoughts on the physical implications of that?
So one of my personal pet hates is this awful rumour that you have to exercise a puppy for 5 minutes per month of life per day. I hate it. I hate it, and everybody remembers it, and everybody quotes it like it's gospel, and there is zero medical evidence for that at all. And everyone's like, oh, it'll protect their joints, it'll protect their bones. No, there's I think you wrote a post on your Facebook quite a while ago, which I shared, and I still now share with my clients, which was a fabulous explanation of the exercise that you should do with puppies. And what I tell people is, look, don't tie your 12-week-old German Shepherd puppy to the back of your bike and head off on a race, but you are very welcome to take that puppy on an hour's walk if it can exercise at its own pace. Stop and sniff some daisies, gallop along for a little bit, sit down for a bit, scratch at itself, have a little rest. So I despise that rule, because I think it just causes such a lot of stress to people, and they're a clock watching, we've done 15 minutes, everybody back in the car, and the poor puppy is going absolutely crazy because it's not getting enough exercise. I had a client this week ring about their 5-month-old border collie, and they were desperately trying to stick to the rules, and of course the puppy was going mad, and they're like, we really want to exercise it more, but we're really worried about it. And I was like, right, yeah, I've got something you can read on the online.
And I mean there's, you know, there's 10 minutes of dragging your puppy on a, you know, on a mission of a walk and getting back again. What's that puppy learned in that 10 minutes compared to going out for 40 minutes, like you said, sitting on a park bench for half of that, letting the watch the world go by, taking it in the puppy's time and pace, which is going to be more beneficial for the puppy. So again, I've spoken to a client this week that was sticking to the rule, but the puppy was already pulling on the lead, and more important information to me was it was pulling on the lead to get back home again. So to me, that's information that the puppy was finding something on the walk a little bit too difficult, and there was no stopping and letting the puppy take anything in, no letting them just absorb again all the sights and smells and sounds and all this novelty that they're taking in.
Yeah, but I guess at the moment that's the problem, isn't there? Because we're all allowed out on our exercise, but we must not stop stopping and sunbathing and sitting on benches is not allowed. But I guess, you know, maybe if you've got a puppy, that's your excuse for sitting down. That's, you know, the puppy must see the world.
Yeah, or even if you're just standing and loitering, just letting them, like you said, letting them really sniff, rather than if they're kind of hyper vigilant and, you know, hyper alert, that's the state they're going to end up finding themselves in on walks. But if they're chilled and having a look and then having a sniff, that's the behavior we want in our adult dogs, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. So I guess at the moment the temptation is to go, right, we've only got an hour, we've got to get out, we've got to get this puppy and get the energy off them and get them to see the world. We've got so much to do in this hour, when actually we probably maybe even now can just take a step back and a bit of a chill and say, right, we're just gonna go out, chill for, you know, even if it takes a whole hour. Would you say that that's okay? You know, if you're taking this 10-12 week puppy out of the house, is it all right for it to be out for an hour? Is that going to be too much at that stage?
Again, if you've got this puppy that's happy to be carried for a bit, happy to go down for a bit, again, you know, there's quite a difference, isn't there, between 10-week-old and a 14-week-old, let's say, in both size and development. So I think the other thing I would say is, for young puppies, is try not to pre-plan your walk. And actually, if you can, just almost go with the puppy. So let them mooch in the direction they want to mooch in. And it might be a little bit to the left for a bit, a few hundred yards, and then they might want to mooch back again. And you're kind of just going with them for now. And that's one way of stopping lead pulling develop, because you're just kind of following the puppy with a loose lead all the time. They're never learning that tension on the lead. And so just mooching with them wherever they might want to investigate to start with, and then once the world is less novel to them and they're less in awe of everything that's going on, then they're in a position they can start learning a bit about walking on a loose lead and training and things that you want to teach them out on walks. But to start with, forget all that, just let them take it all in.
Let them enjoy the world. Gosh, there's such a lot to think about. So, but obviously at the minute, all of us, when we're not out at work or on our designated exercise, are in the house. So how can we keep puppies entertained at home?
So first, going back to what you said, puppies should sleep a lot. And so again, I'm just going to keep drilling that home, not to underestimate how much sleep our puppies should be getting. And if they're not getting 18 to 20 hours in a 24-hour period, it's because
20 hours, amazing.
I know. It's because they're not being set up for that optimal amount of sleep. And that can lead to all sorts of unwanted puppy behaviors, like puppy biting. You get it in babies, you get it in children, and you get it in puppies. People often call it the witching hour at the end of the day. And I think for all of those species, it's because they're just overtired and overstimulated by then. So loads of sleep, loads of rest. the other thing I would be encouraging people to do, and maybe I don't want to go into diet too much, but using food to provide the puppy with independent self-reinforcing activities. So instead of feeding the puppy, they might be on 3 or 4 meals a day. Instead of feeding them from a bowl and it's gone in 30 seconds, try and use that food to provide some form of enrichment for the puppies. And that's one way of using up some time energy budget, but also building in independence. So I personally tend to, for behavioural reasons, tend to recommend people have a bit of a mix of dry kibbly food and wet food, because there are advantages to using dry food in the form of certain activity feeders and scatter feeding and training versus wet food that you can stuff into Kongs or smash onto licky mats. And those are all then part of the puppy's normal daily food regime and diet, rather
making them work
getting them
for
to
their
work
dinner.
for that food.
Exactly.
Yeah,
making meal times a bit of a physical and mental workout. Well,
yeah, giving them loads of important things to chew on as well. Go on.
Oh, well, I was going to just say that I think that that's what I'm advising lots of people to do now, is just to, for adult dogs as well, is just to, well, throw away the food bowl's a bit dramatic, but at least shove it in a cupboard, because all our adult dogs probably, you know, a lot of them are being a bit understimulated and under exercised possibly at the moment. So to make meal times, a bit, they just last a bit longer, they just inhale their food, and it's just over so quickly that
and I think it works for both greedy eaters and fussy eaters, because for the fussy picky eaters, if we actually make feeding time more fun and more stimulating, it will often encourage a picky eater to eat better. So, and then loads of items for them to chew on, because obviously teething is going to happen, and items out of your recycling box, like cardboard boxes, plastic bottles, as long as they're supervised, they're not ripping bits off and ingesting bits. But generally speaking, the environment at home when I have a puppy is chaos. Like, there's just stuff everywhere, because
much like having children then.
Exactly the same again, another parallel, because the more things there are that's appropriate for your puppy to pick up and explore with their mouths, the less likely they're going to pick up something that's inappropriate or undesirable for them to explore with their mouths.
And maybe the ones who aren't so food orientated will be more toy or activity orientated, and that'll keep them busy.
Exactly. So providing all those items for them to explore, you know, exploratory items. Puppies should still, at some point, they are going to need to chew. They're, you know, they are oral by nature. They haven't got opposable thumbs, have they? So they will at some point want to be exploring things with their mouths then.
Oh yes. So we just give them things that we want them to chew on, rather than them finding things themselves to chew on that maybe we don't want them to chew on. So I guess that's, because that's, I think, a big anxiety at the moment, is how we keep our puppies, you know, entertained. But actually, I guess particularly when they're quite young, if they're sleeping 18 to 20 hours a day, we're taking them out for an hour or so during the day, and then you've got 3 or 4 meals to fit in and some toys to play with. For most of the time, actually, I think maybe a lot of these anxieties that people have aren't going to be that as big a deal as they maybe think.
And I think probably it's more as the puppy reaches kind of 4 or 5 months old and they're not sleeping as much and their energy levels start to pick up even more, that actually is a trickier time than the very young puppy stages, where they're because when they're babies, they're putting all their energy into growing, aren't they? So sleep is huge, and feeding is huge, and then it's almost harder once that period's starting to come out into adolescence. Is a whole nother kettle of fish. We'll have to do another live about that one day.
Oh yeah, teenage dogs. So just to finish up then, because I guess I could chat all night but I'm not sure that anybody will want to listen to us. But I can keep going with nobody watching. I don't mind at all. But I guess, so moving away from those really tiny baby puppies who, we are going to be able to take out for walks, we are going to sort of have a little bit of a blip while they're vaccinated, but we're going to get, your vets are going to get those vaccines done. Don't worry, guys, we will get it done.
Yeah.
And, like I said, there's ways and means of avoiding infectious diseases. It's not ideal, but we can manage it. So if if people are coming up with this like 4 or 5 months old, active puppies that aren't being satisfied by an hour's walk a day, where can people go to find out about suitable games and interactions? Because I think we could probably talk about it for ages, but really what people want is somewhere to go and find out about it themselves. So where would you advise people to go?
I don't know. There is a Facebook page called Canine Enrichment that's a really good place to start. So that will have lots of things that you can do at home. The biggest tip I would have, though, for those dogs where exercise is restricted, is to get you and your dog into scent work. And again, all our trainers, everything's gone online, so it should be accessible for everybody at the moment. There's loads of online courses for scent work, and you can start as basic as scattering food in long grass or hiding a toy around the house for your dog to find, or you could build on that and get to quite a professional level where your dog is, searching for a specific scent, a bit like drug detection.
So yeah. Well, we're all supposed to come out with lockdown with a new skill.
Exactly.
So some people come out with some drug detection dogs then. Jolly good.
Exactly. So, but getting a dog to productively use its nose is so tiring and so naturally reinforcing for them. And it's suitable for every breed of dog and every age of dog, because there's no limit to the physical, the physicality of it. So that would be my biggest tip for dogs or owners that are going insane by being shut away and the energy levels, would be to get online, Canine Enrichment Facebook page just for generic enrichment ideas, and then scent work courses, online scent work.
Yeah, well, I guess, we're not going anywhere. So
not yet, no.
We'll do a bit of online work. So, okay, so just to finish up, obviously, you are an APBC, so Association of Pet Behaviour Counsellors, registered trainer and animal behaviourist. Yeah. But if people have got new puppies and do want advice, I always think it's amazing that people get a dog and then, we kind of underestimate how much work it is to train them and educate them. Like, we very gratefully pack our children off to professional educators as soon as we possibly can, and we're all learning right now how hard their job is. Yeah. But we never really think about that. Lots of people kind of skip over that part of the dog's life. Yeah. So if people have got a new puppy and they're now thinking, right, I could do with just a little bit of professional input. Yeah. Where do they go? Who should they see? What kind of qualifications should people be looking for to make sure that the advice that they get is good? Yeah,
absolutely. So again, any problem, however small it might seem, I would absolutely recommend that people seek professional help to just nip it in the bud. And for us, it's a dream to just have, a puppy problem rather than something that's been going on. It's heartbreaking to end up going to see a client that said that this has been happening for 3 years, for example. So check out the APBC website, which is apbc.org.uk. We've also got Facebook pages, which at the moment we're constantly putting tips and advice on there for people, dogs and all animals that are stuck at home. The ABTC, which is
I always have to go quite slowly.
Animal Behaviour and Training Council, will also have a list of registered puppy trainers on there. And as I said, all of us have gone online, so we're all available. We're still working. We're still available to help. Puppy trainers will be able to hopefully decide whether it might actually require a bit more of behavioural slant, depending on what the problem is, whether it's just normal kind of puppy problem or whether it is an actual separation problem already, for example. So they will be able to help. And most of us behaviourists are also trainers. I don't, but lots of people do run their own puppy classes and online training as well. So we'll always be able to point you in the direction of someone who can help if we can't.
Yeah. So the APBC, the Association of Pet Behaviour Counsellors, you do the other one because I can never remember.
Animal Behaviour and Training Council.
And what about the APDT, the Association of Pet Dog Trainers?
So
They're
they
the
are
other ones that I'll often...
So them and Puppy School, and they are all part of the Animal Behaviour and Training Council. So you'll find all of their details on that website.
Yeah. Yeah. This is the thing. I think, you know, just as a sign off, if you have got a new puppy right now, congratulations. It's really exciting time. We are dealing with slightly strange times though. But as hopefully this has been really helpful and that you are able to go away with some tips. But if you do need some professional help, you know, you can give your vets a ring, but I find that lots of vets don't. We have talked on a microcosm of a dog's life, and we've been here 45 minutes and we've barely scraped the surface. It is a humongous subject, and it's one where I'm very happy as a vet to refer on, because I think that level of expertise is, I can help you, but I have not got the time to really drill down. And I think you need to go to the APBC or one of the other, one of those other associations, because it is a massively unregulated field. Anybody can set themselves up, and people do, and do a huge amount of damage.
Yeah.
And I'll just finish. I had one client recently who had a dog. It was an adult dog. Had horrendous dog aggression, fear sort of related aggression, and he just signed up with a very well-known national franchise company of behavior, you know, dog trainers and behaviorists, and he said, oh, what do you think of them? And I wasn't very polite, but I remained professional, and we looked on their website at the local trainers profile page. There was not a single qualification on it. The entire qualification of this registered person appeared to be that he quite liked dogs, and he sort of thought it might be a nice thing to do. And so
you've got to be careful with your dog,
guys. Go to the right people, and you're covered by insurance, aren't you? So people, if you have a genuine issue, a lot of insurance companies will pay, or you can claim.
Cheaper in the long run to just pay someone to help you the sooner it starts than to end up having to pay for more sessions and in-depth sessions later on in life. So absolutely get help when you can.
Exactly. Right. Thank you so much, Rosie. We'll see how well this goes down, because this is the first time we've done anything like this. But if people like it, please let us know. If you have got anything else you'd like us to chat about for quite a long time, but you know, I had a good time, let us know. Hopefully if I press the right buttons when we finish, this will be saved on Instagram and Facebook as well. And thank you ever so much for sticking with us, everyone. Thanks for chatting, Rosie, and
no problem. Enjoy your evening. Bye-bye.
Bye.